Awesome, great, glorious day it is. This is the day the Lord has made, and indeed we shall rejoice and be glad in it. Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Umubanga podcast, where we aim to inspire, transform, and inform. So if you're tuned in, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Look, we're all about bringing people who are causing impact, and sometimes we don't get to know who these people are, because when we see them on screen, when we see what they are doing, we're just like, anaspesa puche yenzeni mwai. But look, they're there making us smile. Yeah, so today I'm talking to Wendson Mavoro. He's a top-notch journalist, corporate MC, voiceover artist, and media personality with a keen eye for the sports world. He has embarked on multiple journeys as a sports and basketball advocate, with accolades stemming as far back as high school days, where he was part of the dominating high school teams that won inter-school nationals in Zambia. He has climbed the ladder of journalism with times of service in Prime TV and now under Diamond Television as a newscaster, anchor, and producer, covering major sporting tournaments across Lusaka and Zambia. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the one and only guru, Wendson Mavoro.
Thank you very much for having me. It's always a great pleasure to be here.
Yeah, how are you?
Very, very much okay. And yourself?
Very well, thanks. Yeah. Look, for nowadays, at what age were you playing basketball? Because, look, this bio has a lot of sports.
Well, I started playing basketball a long time ago, and you won't believe it, but the first sport actually I got to interact with was not really basketball. Mm-hmm. It was football, and tennis. And by then, we used to live in Chadley. So I'd go over to Munali. There was a football team that used to practice there. I think that must have been 90, somewhere in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. And I would do a bit of some football there, do a bit of some tennis. So mainly I was a football tennis guy. Yeah. So, but I didn't quite have much luck with football. And because I'm a person that loves to see progress, competition has always been something I relish, So you're in this team trying out for football, but you're not really seeing yourself making progress. You're not really seeing yourself, getting to that next level. Yeah. So that's when I said, okay, I think football is not for me. Let me try something else. Tennis, I was relatively doing okay, but it got boring, Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, it got boring, There was no... I'm not saying it's a boring sport. No. It's a good sport. I like it. I still watch it. I follow it. But I just needed something more challenging, something more physical, something more, more adrenaline pumping. Yeah. And that's when I saw people playing basketball, and I started watching them play basketball. Playing basketball. And I remember, I think it must have been 98 was the year that I really, told myself, okay, no more watching. Yeah. I need to start this. So that's how I started. Just, people are playing. I'll just be there by the courtside watching them playing, pick some basketballs. Those that were doing shoot-arounds, help them pick the rebounds. And before long, they'd also give me a chance. Shoot. And because learning is a lifelong guiding principle for me, it really helped me to also just, pay attention, concentrate, and begin to learn the ropes within basketball.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome stuff. So look, for somebody who's watching, who is Wendson?
Well, as you rightly said, although I just have to correct one thing there, I've never worked for Prime TV. I've only worked for Diamond TV. Okay. I've only worked for Diamond TV. So Wendson Mavoro basically is a journalist, is a Christian, and is one person that loves learning, works hard, is committed. And in a nutshell, I'm just a young man working his way up the ladder.
Okay. Yeah. So, look, walk us through your journey in terms of school, because many times we ask to say, so how did you find yourself in this space? Yeah.
Okay. So, sometimes life doesn't always pan out the way that we
wanted it
expect or envision it will. Yeah, but for me, I was fortunate to grow up with both parents until, they both died. And equally, even after they died, I still went to a house where I was given a roof, and I believe given the right, training and teaching, which has culminated into who I am today. But my education, I moved between schools. There were challenges there. At some point, I was out of school, got delayed. Yeah, so there are those, but I really don't like to talk about the challenges so much, because there's this narrative that people always have, which puts us in position where we have to paint a picture that for you to relatively enjoy a bit of some success, you always have to suffer.
Yeah.
For me, I don't look at it that way. Experiences are lessons. They teach us. They make us better. They shape us into who we are.
We're not glorifying poverty.
No. We shouldn't. You see, we shouldn't. I like that word. I like that word, Umubanga. We shouldn't be glorifying poverty. Yeah. But what we should emphatically be able to give out there are the lessons that we learned from the journey that we undertook. Yeah. So I went to. Fortunately, I was able to go to college. My hardworking auntie, a single woman, worked hard, took me to college. And of course, a few other people, that came on board were able to offer the support that I needed to be able to get at least an education. From there, I worked, and this is something that probably you didn't know, okay? Or should I say I didn't give it to you? So I don't blame you for that. But I worked as a human resource consultant for almost 4 years. Okay. And from there, when that company hit some challenges, I had to move on. And I'm a type of a person that I don't like doing the same thing for a long time. So not that I don't do one thing, no, but I always look for growth. Whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm on, I'm always looking for opportunities for growth. So a time came when this media thing, it had always been in me,
So was it something where you like watch on TV and just like, I want to?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I used to like the way, Ben Kangwa would do his interviews, the late. I used to like the way, you look at Uncle Frank, with his Frank talk, the way he would do those interviews and the way he would just be. And for me, it was not really about grilling of the guests, asking them the tough questions. I was just in love with the art. That's how funny it is. For me, I was just in love with the art. And I'm like, okay. And then it now graduated from just being in love with the art to understanding the deeper meaning of it, the nobility surrounding the art. Like, okay, why do we do this? Why are we doing what we are doing? What is the why of this endeavor? And from then on, I said, okay, so I will not just be doing something that I like, but I can do something that can contribute to development of this country. I can do something that can contribute to somebody out there to learn something new, to understand certain things that are happening in this country. This is the whole idea of doing this. And then, movie TV came on. And then, people like Mutinta Chiseko, Costa Mwansa, these guys, Augustine Lungu, the late, I was just watching them, I'm working, doing HR, but I'm keenly watching programs and seeing how these guys are doing what they're doing. And that just sort of sparked that fire that I had already inside me. But the opportunity at that time was nowhere in sight. So here's something that you're passionate about, or here's something that you feel you can do, but opportunity hasn't yet manifested.
Interesting. So look, it says that you started public relations at NIPA. So when you were doing your HR work, how did it come about you finding yourself in TV?
Yeah, so that is something about me anyway. So I'm a person who's not confined to the academic exposure or qualification I have, though it could potentially be an area of strength.
Yes.
I mean, for those that will have the privilege of listening and watching us right now, I must make it very clear that, you know, your academic domain obviously is your area of strength. It's your area of competence because you're trained in that. But I have a personal philosophy. I look at myself as a resource and not as a person that is defined by the competence I am given through a classroom. So if I have the ability to study mechanics, even outside the classroom, I would do it, learn the craft, perfect it, and be able to do it. That's me. So when the opportunity, for example, I studied public relations, and for me, it was never really an issue of just being a spokesperson, as the general misconception is about public relations. You know, it's quite a vast profession, which is not limited to making a statement on TV and just explaining why garbage is not being collected, or why Zesco is load shedding people, or why things are not happening the way they're supposed to. No. That is just a component of public relations. In fact, that is just like a small percentage of public relations itself. So how did I find myself doing human resource? Well, I met somebody who I had an interaction with. And at the time, I was looking for internship. So I told them I would like to come and try out or do internship with your company in the area of public relations and marketing, if you would allow. So they told me to apply. I applied, and I think 3 months passed. I received a call, and I had to walk all the way from Mavoro up to Rotsbach, you know. And when I reached there, I was told, we looked at your CV. So we'd like to find out, you know, what is it that you can do? We had that interview session. And after the interview, I was told, unfortunately, we don't need public relations for this firm. Neither do we need marketing, because the firm already has a name for itself. The clientele, our clients do the marketing on our behalf. So unfortunately, we don't have a place for you. Then I asked, okay, so what place is available? Then they said, okay, but I mean, looking at what you've presented here, still, we don't think it will be a good fit for you. I said, well, I'm willing to learn. Like I said, I'm not here to get paid. I'm just here to learn.
Yeah.
And I want to get out of the hood, you know. I don't want to be seated at home the whole time doing nothing. So I just really want to be anywhere. If I have to make tea for people here, it's okay. As long as I'm here from 8 up until 16, that's fine. So the man said, okay, come on Monday, we'll discuss. So I went again, walked back on Monday. And when I reached there, I was told, you'll be delivering letters. Okay, so started delivering letters, you know. Started delivering letters. And
Did
those
it
letters
crush
were
your
to
ego
clients.
at some point?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, I like I used to question myself, like, okay, why is my path hard? You know, we've got friends we're in the same class with, you know, they just finished, they're with this parastatal, you know, before we graduate, they're already linked to this organization. Why does my path have to be this hard? But you see, what I didn't understand is sometimes the path that is carved out for us has everything to do with the ultimate destination.
Yeah.
For you to shine where, you know, God is taking you, you really need to understand where you are. You really need to understand the lessons in the journey. Okay? Because the lessons in the journey are what will make you be relevant, are what will make you shine where you're going, the destination, where you eventually end up. So I used to have those feelings like, okay, why am I delivering letters, you know? I was better than those guys in class, you know? I mean, I even the lecturers knew that it's, why does my path have to be like this? But one thing that comforted me was, it's not a waste of time if I understand what I'm doing, if I give purpose to what I'm doing, if I understand the purpose of what I'm doing, it's not a waste of time. So I said, okay, why should I deliver letters now? What is the goal? The goal is to get in this organization. Fine. Where am I going to go in this organization? Then I looked at what there were different departments. There was accounts, there was the consultants, There was, what other department was there? I think about 3 or 4 departments. But what really I loved the most was the departments for the consultants.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I think I can do this. But what do they do? So I started learning what they do. I would deliver their letters. They would ask me to make phone calls on their behalf. I would do that. If they asked me to tag along, I would carry their files.
Yep.
I would go and take minutes in their meetings while I'm learning what they're doing. And before long, the time came, I think 8 months after, I was told one of the guys was sick. And because I used to go to meetings with him quite a lot, I was said, okay, just go there, listen to what the client will say, write everything, come back. We've already told the client that we're sending a trainee. So you're just basically going to get a statement. You'll bring it over, we'll review it, and then we'll be able to engage the client at a later date. So I went there and we started talking with the client. I was doing minutes, and before long, I started giving the client the solutions. So when I went back to the office, I consolidated the statement, handed it over to my boss, and the client called the boss and said, well, there's no need for the meeting that you said, because the young man you sent just gave me what I wanted.
Awesome.
So the man said, whoa, okay. Then he called me in the office. What did you say? Well, the man said ABCD, and this is what I told him. Okay. And month end, I was finally employed and put on probation. And I remember I wasn't getting a salary. I was given an allowance, I think of, was it 300 or 400? I can't remember. It was around that much. And that's how my journey in human resource started. So I've never started human resource, but I committed myself and applied myself to understand, by virtue and nature of the job, what was required of me. And I'll be very frank with you, it laid quite a significant foundation and impact on my life that up until today, I still benefit and build on. And the same applies for my media journey as well. I've never started journalism anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you find yourself at Diamond?
It's another interesting story. So the Diamond journey for me, one day when I write a book, I think it's one of those that I'll be very proud to tell. So when the company I used to work for human resource, was because the owner unfortunately died. So the company started having huge challenges. And I felt like, okay, I needed to move on and do something different, something else. And I used to drop application letters everywhere. And so one day we were from dropping an application letter, I think it must have been at the Lusaka City Council. So when going, I think we used a different route. No. When going, we used Bujimfo. So we passed here. And there was a long queue of people there. Okay, all the way from inside up until outside, up to where the post newspapers used to be, like a very long queue. So we just drove past it and went to the Lusaka City Council. I dropped my application letter. And when we're coming back, there's a man that I was with in that car. I remember very well, Mr. Jongandwe. He's an elder at the church where I go to. So, and we like calling him Elder Joe. So I was with Elder Joe in the car and I was telling him, like, what's this queue all about? What is this queue all about? It's very long. So he told me, well, this looks like people are here for interviews or something. That's how we drove past it and went back and went about our business, doing 1 or 2 things. And then a friend of mine that we used to be in the class with sent me a text saying, there's a new TV station opening. Here's a phone number. Call this number, let them give you the email and forward your application letter to it. So I never called. A week passed, I never called. And then the time I was calling that phone number, a very famous gentleman that we all know, and this is not Costa Manza, but somebody else, picked up and says, so I said, this is Wendson Mavoro. I was given this number. I'm interested to apply. So I just wanted to know the positions available. And then the man said, sir, unfortunately, you're late. Yeah, so this thing was closed last week. And I said, okay. Was it advertised anyway? It says no, but I think we have what we want. But anyway, just send your CV. You never know. That's how that conversation ended. I forwarded my CV to the address that he gave me. And 2 weeks later, I received a call. You can come for the interview. And when I went, I was clad in a suit, tie. And to my surprise, I was the only person that was looking or dressed different from everybody I found. Nobody was in a suit. I was the only one that was in a suit, And I was like, am I at the wrong place? And strangely, it was the same place that we had seen a long queue when I was delivering my application letter to the Lusaka City Council.
Yeah.
So again, we found a very ridiculously long queue that day. And I told Elder Joe, I was like, you know what? Me, I can't stand on the sun just to be able to hand in or do this interview. So, I was the one dressed different from everybody. So I was like, okay, these boys, obviously, I'm not dressed like them. Obviously, I just have to, so I employed a tactic, since there were people that were dressed casually, like artists, people with painted hair, and all these kinds of, how artists and media people dress sometimes. Yeah. So I just walked right past everybody and went to the people that were doing the interviews. And I told them, I said, good morning. I said, good morning. I'm here for an interview and I'm supposed to report for work. I've seen this quite a long queue. So I wanted to ask if at all I could be given a chance to do it quickly so that I can be able to attend to work. And at the time...
That's interesting that you say, I am reporting for work.
So the man said, who are you? And I said, Mr. Mavoro, Wendson Mavoro. Okay, Mr. Mavoro, just wait. So he went in. When the person that was done immediately, I was told, Mr. Mavoro, can you come? So I went. The interview was in this room. I was just standing right there, waiting. So the moment the person who was being interviewed came out, I went in. And when I went in, I found our current general manager, Diamond TV, was there. Mm-hmm. And there was somebody else, I've forgotten who else was there. And the gentleman that
you spoke with
sent me the email for the application, they were seated there. So they asked me, okay, so just introduce yourself. I did the introductions and I told them I'm here to... So they said, no, we're employing scriptwriters, news anchors, and what else did they say? Producers. So I said,
Did you know of those roles?
No.
Like at the top of your head,
No,
did you know what a producer did?
I didn't know what producing was. I didn't know what a scriptwriter does. I didn't have anything.
Yeah, at least you knew a news anchor, so.
No, at the time I'd never done news anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, so I said, well, I'm sorry. I think I was misinformed. And then they were shocked. What do you mean you were misinformed? I said, well, the invitation I got was talking about administration and marketing. So I'm assuming this interview is for marketing and administration because my experience merits me or gives me competences in these areas. Then they said, no, we are looking for news anchors. And then I said, then let me not waste much of your time because I don't think, I was prepared for marketing and administration. Then the gentleman says, no, but wait. So you thought you were coming here for an interview for administrative job? I said, yes, that's what I thought. And he says, well, but why don't you try out for script or producing? I said, no. And he says, why? I said, it's boring. Then the man was shocked, like, why would you say it's boring? I was like, come on, it's boring. Just writing scripts and then what? And then what? And then I was like, so they laughed, they laughed. And I remember JM, Miss P, very wonderful woman, extraordinary lady, and she was just there looking at me with the specs, like this young man. I was just like, it's boring, like news anchoring. I'm like, okay, maybe news anchoring, I can do a little bit of that. Then they said, but have you ever done it before? I'm like, no, I've never done. So they gave me a script. Can you read that? So I read it. Then they said, okay, Mr. Mavoro, let's cut this long story short. Okay. In the next 2 weeks, you'll receive a call. We'll try you out on something. So that's the interview that I did. I was never asked funny questions. I was never asked, can you sing? Can you do this? What do you understand? No.
Yeah.
That's the kind of interview that I did. And for me, when I reflect on it today, it teaches me something about management, about an approach to life. You know, sometimes, even when you're looking, even this great production that you have going on here, you know, sometimes you necessarily don't have to look at maybe what qualification a person has. It is very important.
Yeah.
You shouldn't ignore it, but you shouldn't limit yourself to it. You know, when I walked in that room, those guys saw something in me that I didn't even know about me.
Yeah.
Miss P, the gentleman whose name I'm a little bit uncomfortable to mention, but they saw something about me that day that I didn't know about myself. And it was never about, we are looking for a scriptwriter, we're looking for a news anchor. No. What they saw in the room that day was talent.
Okay.
And this is something that maybe a lot of people need to learn and take a leaf from.
Look, you were authentic to state that you don't know all these things. And there's somebody who's thinking to say, but if I say that, I'll not get another opportunity. What's the importance of one being authentic and knowing their strength and being able to say, hey, if it's in Gakwanise, but when in the necessary conditions, I can learn?
For me, the answer is in the very correct word you've used, authenticity. I went in that room not to behave like customers. I went in that room not to behave like Franklin Tembo Jr. I went in that room not trying to imitate Uncle Frank. I was in that room as Wendson Mavoro. Okay? And whatever I did there was just me being me. Okay?
Yep.
Was just me being me. But I was fortunate enough to have people that saw the talent beyond, you know, the person I was presenting myself to be. So for me, when we talk about honesty and authenticity, those are the two best qualities that make a person stand out. You know, the world is often attracted to uniqueness, and it naturally repels sameness. If you come to do something that everybody else is doing, we'll just look at you and be like, we've seen that before. But if Umubanga does his thing in a Umubanga way, the podcast will be different. Okay? People will watch it because you are being you. You are not being all these guys that we watch, you know, from the USA, from South Africa, from Nigeria, who are doing podcasts and approaching them in a certain way. If it has authenticity, because there can only be one you. The way you ask the questions is different from the way I would ask the questions. The way you engage with the guest is different from the way I would engage with the guest. And it is that same difference that makes you stand out. So for those that would really be thinking, okay, lying, you see, lies have short legs, unfortunately. So you can lie in an interview, but unfortunately it will catch up with you. Because jobs in the corporate world where we, you know, currently are, it's about practicality. It's about doing, it's about performance. It's hands-on. They taught you in college about this, but now nobody is there to, you have to put into practice what you were taught. So honesty and authenticity is the best policy and quality that any person listening to us or watching us right now must be able to appreciate and must be able to hold on, because that one day will single them out from everybody else for certain opportunities.
Awesome. So 2 weeks. Were you called after the 2 weeks you were given?
So I was called, but at the time I traveled out of Lusaka. And where I went, there was no network.
Okay.
So when they called, the phone was unreachable. Okay. And when I came back, the moment I came to network, to an area where there was network, and you know those days when you have those phones, they would, you know, show you missed calls.
Missed call notifications.
So when I returned the call from that missed call notification, the gentleman picked up and like, Mr. Mavoro. I think, Mr. Mavoro, I don't know what to say. You know, like I've been calling you for the last 1 week, and we just wanted you to give you the last shot, okay? But unfortunately, it seems this is like a hobby for you and you're not interested. I'm like, no. I am interested, actually. So when can I come? I was like, look, your friends have been going through the second phase of these interviews and we're now into the third phase. So it's virtually difficult for me to say, come, because you needed to do the second phase with everybody else. So unfortunately, he allowed me. I went there and then we just interacted. Again, it was an interaction. Okay, so what about this? Can you do this? What about this? What about that? And, from there I left. And then I met a friend of mine whom we currently work with. Nchumunyangandu, he's currently the sub-editor in the newsroom and he is in charge of the sports desk. So then I asked him, how are you guys doing it? And he said, well, we're told me, I'm coming in as a journalist in the newsroom and presenter of sports. So I was given a script to do a dummy and all that. What did you do? I didn't do any of that. So I was like, well, I just went there and we were talking. Are you sure? I'm like, yeah. So I was like, okay, fine. So from there, I went back and then I was supposed to go for the third time. And the third time, at least I was more organized. I was available. I was around. So I went and I was told to say, okay, look, Mr. Mavoro, will not beat about the bush.
Yep.
You don't have the profile that we're looking for, but you may have the talent. So based on that, we'll give you an opportunity to try out.
Okay.
Yeah. So I said, oh, okay. Interesting. And that's how my journey at Diamond TV began. So from there, we finally did until, it was from, I don't know how many thousands, hundreds, 100, 80, 50, 30, 25, 20 people. And from 20, was it 15? Until we remained quite a very small number. If I remember correctly, I think it must have been 10 or 8 that remained. And that was the core team that Costamanza started with.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was privileged to be among that team.
So from 2015 till date. Awesome.
So we're going through training, being taught, just him communicating the vision of the television station, what exactly we are going to be capitalizing on, what our identity will be on the market, all those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. So what was your first, after you're now part of the team, what was your first task now? Was it news anchoring or you were tasks thrown into the field?
Yeah, so I remember there was a company, a reinsurance company. Yeah, so when we began, because news is our flagship product at Diamond TV, of course, we're the home of Z-Bob culture and all these other things, but news remains our flagship product. So news was something that we first of all had to establish a solid foundation on and then begin to build from there. So my first task, I remember, was Costamanza sent me and my colleague, Bobby, and so we went to cover this assignment in the evening at what hotel is this? Intercontinental Hotel. Yeah, so it was at Intercontinental Hotel. That's where we went to cover that function for reinsurance. I had never done journalism work before. I didn't know what you're supposed to write, how a story is supposed to be structured.
How it should even be edited.
Exactly.
Or flow, yeah.
So I was a bit jittery, but I went there and I wrote the story and gave it to my friend in Chimunya who had practiced some journalism where he was coming from, a radio station. So he looked at it and said, okay. So he edited it. And then I said, you know what? If you edit it, it will look like it's okay. So let me submit the raw copy to boss and let boss have a look at it, And the moment my boss sees it, I want then to be given feedback. Say, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. And this is the thing I appreciate about Costamanza all the time, He's one person that is always out there to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the people that is never intimidated by what you can do or what you do.
Yeah.
And he's one person who has always taught us to be comfortable with who you are and what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave him the script. He looked through. He called me and said, okay, so look, this is too long. This is unnecessary. This is unnecessary. This should have come here. This should have gone there. Go and redo it. I went, rewrote, sent it to him via email. He looked at it and said, this is fine. It can go.
Okay.
So that was my first assignment before I even went on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that was like my first assignment, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Beside the other things that we used to do during training, but like official going out there, that was my first assignment and field work. And it was quite an experience because of the things that I saw.
Yeah.
You know, the job that I used to do, the way I would interact with people was different.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would often meet business owners. I would meet managing directors. So I never had a chance to interact with the people on the ground. The only time I would be doing that in my human resource journey is when you're given a task, for example, to go and administer conditions of service, explain the terms, and or maybe, you know, explain the labor laws and all that.
Yep.
If there's a policy change at the Ministry of Labor, you go to the clients, you explain it, you guide on how they administer. So I never really used to interact with, you know, but going as a journalist sort of made me see the whole scenario differently. And it was fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, look, remember we spoke when we started the conversation. You're a basketball player. And a few years later, you go back to basketball, but in different shoes. Not playing, but on the camera and on the mic. How did that come about?
Okay, yeah. So, you know, for me, basketball is more than just a sport. And I say that because, as I had mentioned earlier on, that I'm one person that doesn't really like to talk much about the difficulties and the struggles that I've been through as a person, because I believe everybody is going through struggles, you know, and it's just a matter of how you're surfing those tides. But at one point in my life, I was this close. In fact, I was a foot in going the wrong direction. Okay. And what sort of saved me a lot was the game of basketball, because you would go and do other things, but you'd remember, oh, let me just go and do some practice. You know, you go for practice. At the very time you're doing practice, your friends are being arrested for doing something that you potentially could have been a part of.
Yeah.
And then it was normal. I mean, I didn't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I was just lucky. I went for practice. I was not with the guys when the police were coming through. You know, I was not with the guys when somebody was caught with some weed. You know, that kind of things.
Yeah.
So basketball for me, I later realized, and then my auntie, a very brilliant and smart woman, realized quick enough that if he keeps playing basketball, obviously, it will save him from a lot of things.
Yeah.
So she would always encourage me. You know, if I miss practice for 2 days, she would ask, "Lero simuenda basketball, you know? Munatioka? What's going on?" You know, she would always be there to ask. So I didn't know why she was pushing me to play, but I later realized that she knew that if I don't play basketball, my friend, Matera was going to make something out of me that society would regret and despise.
So which basketball team were you playing for? Matera Magic?
Yes, Matera Magic is where I sort of settled and started playing basketball seriously. So I did, play, and like I said, for me, again, basketball was not just a sport, because I have one philosophy, and that is learning. For me, life is a lesson.
Yeah.
At any given point, anywhere, life is a lesson. The only difference is we're either listening and learning or not simply paying attention at all. So from basketball, I started learning things about leadership, things about teamwork. If I'm frustrated, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to fight with this person? No, that's against teamwork. If I'm angry, how am I supposed to manage my emotion? I learned a lot of things that sometimes I can attack your action and not your persona. Okay? I can tell you what you're doing here is rubbish. I'm simply attacking the action and not you. So I learned a lot of things from basketball. And then it became an interesting game. I'm like, okay, so it's not just about bouncing the basketball. there's actually a lot of things that you can learn from this. And then there were, the senior guys that we had at Mavoro basketball court there, when Magic was during its heydays, during its glorious era.
Isn't it still in its glorious?
Well, it's never ended. Yeah. Anyway, the Tamanga boys are still running. Congratulations, they're the champs, by the way. So, I started looking at people like, you look at people like Malindi. The man is playing basketball, he's committed, he comes every day, he's got a decent education, he's got a good job. And I'm like, okay, so you can actually do this.
Yep.
And live an organized life. I started looking at guys that were doing extremely well academically and still playing basketball. Okay? And
I'll say this, I think with my interaction, I think a lot of basketball players we have in Zambia learn it.
That's the thing. I got exposed to that world and I'm like, okay. And then the other guys that would come and play, they were either working and doing something with their life. So I said, so basketball is not really the end of life, but it's a place where you can actually learn, connect, network, and do a lot of things with your life. That's what made me comfortable with the sport. And that's what made me just say, okay, let me play this for as long as I can. And that's how my basketball journey kind of just kicked off, and amazing memories, amazing journey, until we got to a point where, I got busy with work, life kicked in, and I couldn't really have time just to go and practice and, started getting a bit of some flesh, here and there. So it was very difficult to run, with the chaps like Lincoln.
Yeah.
You see him here, the next minute he's behind you. You try to catch up. I just can't catch up anymore, So I said, okay, I can't run with Lincoln now. I think it's time to, but one of the things that I had was, like you said, we have such enormous pool of people that come from diverse academic, professional backgrounds that can use basketball to be able to just encourage a lot of young people out there, establish something that can attract people, not only for sponsorship, even when we talk about sponsorship, but this sponsorship must be able to make impact to a girl child, impact to marginalized sects of our society. So that's when I said, okay, in Zambia, we have a lot of basketballers, but they don't get a chance to watch basketball. They don't get a chance to know what's happening in the world of basketball. So in football, all you simply have to do is go back to the first page. You see everything happening there. There's a whole lot of people that have, that are reporting on football, that are talking about football. There's a whole lot of shows on TV. But where in this country do you see a basketball show?
Yeah.
Nowhere. So that's when I said, okay, we're going to do something about it. So that's how I got in touch with a few guys. We came up together. They have the machinery, the equipment, came up together, and we started covering basketball games live. And we began a journey of seeing how best we can just bring basketball on the spotlight.
So you're still doing that?
Yes, we are still doing that.
Awesome. So look, you're passionate about basketball, and as you put it, there were people who you would see on the court who are doing other things because basketball is not their main source of income. It's just treating it as a hobby. So do you feel, with your experience, with you covering week in, week out, I think there was a time I watched Lincoln for the whole season, because I was doing a documentary about him. He's my young brother. I think at some point I wasn't paying attention that he's won a lot of stuff. So when I was doing a documentary about him, I was like, oh, so there's this much happening, but what's the financial gain if somebody takes it up professionally? So,
Okay. Yeah. So I think way back when I would say I was in Lincoln's position, the opportunities were not as accessible as they are now. I would like to make it very clear. They were there, but not as accessible as they are now. In the past, it was very difficult for you to be a very good player and get noticed. Of course, social media was not as predominant as it is today. And it was very just not, the scholarship opportunities were there, but we didn't know what we were supposed to do to qualify, to be eligible, to capitalize on those opportunities from this side of things. It took somebody to obviously come either all the way from the US or from Europe to see this good player, go back, start doing the paperwork. There was this, okay, but over time, there's been a change. The emergence of social media, the proliferation of the game of basketball, not only from a viewership point of view, but from a commercial point of view itself, has also played a significant role. And then we were once in an era in Zambian basketball where teams had sponsorship. So you could literally earn something from the sport. But through the privatization that happened with the coming on of the MMD government, that also impacted it had devastating financial consequences on teams that had sponsorship then. So after that era, basketball sort of was just a sport that people that were passionate about would engage themselves in. I wouldn't say it was a hobby, because half of the people I've met, play basketball because they are passionate about it. And so from that time, after the privatization and everything, it's been challenging for most teams to be able to financially be stable enough to start offering players an income, except for a few that had some form of semi-formal to informal sponsorship. Okay. And from that time up until where we are today, where now we have individuals literally that are still passionate about the game of basketball, that are single-handedly, some of them have grouped together just to sponsor teams to be able to participate and play in the league. And the whole reason of even me and the different stakeholders that we work with coming on board to say, okay, let's start taking the game of basketball out there. We want to create a product out of basketball. And this product ultimately should be able to pay a person like Lincoln, should be able to expose Lincoln to numerous opportunities. It should be able to create some sort of incentive that would motivate him to know that if he wakes up in the morning, why should he wake up at 5 a.m. and start shooting free throws if there's nothing? But we get motivated to wake up in the morning to go and work, because I know I'm going to get money to pay my rentals. I'm going to get money to buy bread and, take care of other expenses that are necessary for my well-being. So that is what we are trying to do generally, just to be able to create a structure that we incentivize the game of basketball to a point that even locally basketball will become attractive, because now the opportunities, as I mentioned earlier on, is massive. It's easy for players now to go to play in Tanzania. We've had players from our league, go to do wonderful things across the Zambian borders: Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Malawi, South Africa. We've literally had players that, in fact, we still have players that some are playing in those leagues for small teams out there. We've got guys that are playing in Europe who went as students, they're playing. We've got guys that have gone to the United States of America because of basketball. Just recently, I think a month ago, if I'm not mistaken, there's a 20-year-old young man, from Monali Sands Basketball Club, Ndama. He's currently in the United States of America, all because of basketball, and he's on a roster playing.
Awesome.
And the future is only bright. God knows what he has in store for that young man. We've got another young man who's playing in Spain. The other day I was watching him playing for a fourth-tier team that was up against FC Barcelona, doing amazing things over there. So the opportunities that people back in the day never had, they're here now. But what we're trying to do is, in as much as we can send these players out there to go and try their luck, to go and prove their worth, we should also be able to incentivize basketball back at home, so that the players that don't have the opportunity to go out there can still enjoy the game of basketball back home and earn whatever they can from it, as minimal as it may be.
The market is huge. I think many times I've been at Nasdaq, it's always full. to capacity. Like
Yeah.
where, we don't have space now, no entry. But it's always full. So it shows that there's a huge demand for the sport. And look, even as we conclude, I do understand you spoke on an aspect of church. Feels like you are firmly grounded. And as you who's gone through the journey growing up in Matero and being exposed to a lot of things, you've been exposed to the good, to the bad, and you still decided to forge ahead and follow the right path because you had mentorship, you had people around you, you had leaders, elders, you had people who you'd look up to guide. Now, this is somebody who is just on the basketball court. The people they're exposed to are not as well that exposed, or they're into drugs. Because I do know as well, yes, there's that aspect, but there's as well massive drug abuse in the sport as well. Yeah. So, what's that you tell to somebody who is trying to make it then?
Okay, so for me, again, the thing that basketball has really helped me with is character building, character development. And you mentioned something very pertinent, the issue of mentorship. Who you get exposed to ultimately shapes, what you become, the value systems that guide your actions and your belief system altogether. So I've been privileged to be surrounded by people that were constantly, in my ear, telling me to avoid certain things. Of course, like everybody else, I was not perfect and good at listening.
Yes.
But at least
there was a voice.
There was a voice that kept on telling me, look, do not worry about this. Just take your time. I know you want to make it. Your friends are driving. They're doing all these things. Things are working out for them. There's this temptation. But just stay the course. Stay the course. Stay the course. Stay the course. And it really helped me. And this is something that, a lot of young people, sometimes we underestimate. We live in a world of social media and we're exposed to a whole lot of information. Bad, good, destructive, constructive, building, and something that would just confuse you altogether. But it is very, very important to develop a reservoir of people that have enough experience to be able to tell you the truth, to be able to guide you, not because they want to benefit anything from you, but because they care for you and they want to see the best for you. It's always important. Yeah. And this is something that all of us try to run away from. We don't want people that will tell us the truth. We want people that can conform to what it is that we tolerate and are comfortable with, even if that thing has got potential to destroy our lives. Hence, we have this issue of gangs, this issue of cliques, groups, where people are just doing nonsensical things. It's because we don't want to identify with people that would call a spade, be able to mentor you, be able to tell you about life, people that you can ask. I was fortunate enough to have men that could talk to me about girls. I was fortunate enough to have men that would teach me about the corporate world. I was fortunate enough to have men that would tell me the importance of having a spiritual balance. I was fortunate enough to have men that would speak to my life and guide me and tell me, say, okay, look, education is very important. In other words, accountability.
Yes.
I've always had people that I'm accountable to, and I respect those people. So it has helped me to always, it has kept me in check, in short. So to people that, like, for example, even in the game of basketball, I'll be very honest with you. When we started playing basketball, nowadays I laugh. You can ask your young brother. The things we see nowadays, we laugh, because back in the day, you can't buy a beer and start drinking in front of a coach.
Yeah.
That couldn't happen.
And then you'll be playing.
Yes. You see, your coach was like your parent. The same way you listen to your parents when they say something is the same way that you're going to respond to a coach, to your coach. And parents back then were confident enough to surrender their kids to coaches because they knew that those coaches meant well for their kids. They were an extension. Okay, so coaches were an extension of our parents' on the basketball courts and off the basketball court when we get to travel or play games out of town or maybe out of the country. So the whole issue of discipline for me, when you talk about peer pressure and everything, what really helped also was our big brothers, you know, that we had at Material Magic over there, you know, Kavalakateve, CZ, all these guys, you know, Brian, Ben, all these guys, they would always tell us, they would say, young Amaiche, this thing, I saw you Kudevo Street, what were you doing? You see, those are the kind of elder brothers that we had. You Amaiche, you know, what were you doing there? So we were equally accountable to them at that level. Even today when we meet, you know, they would still respect you like you're their contemporary, but we still respect them as our elder brothers, and they still tell us, they'll still tell you, this is not right, this is not good. We have maintained that relationship, you know. So this, like you saying, the drug abuse, the alcohol abuse, and all these other negative vices that may surround sports, which of course is not only limited to basketball. I agree with you, it's there. But for me, it's a challenge where now the coaches themselves must begin to sort of start creating programs where these young men can be spoken to, because some of them just don't have that voice in their lives. It's just a gap that needs to be filled. They deliberately have to come up with initiatives also that can be anti. Because imagine in the NBA, the most prestigious basketball league in the whole world, if they were not strict with regards their rules on drug and substance uptake or abuse, do you think that league would be anything today? It wouldn't. But because there's a strict policy surrounding such kind of things, you have a league that is what it is today. So that for me, it's just that voice that you talked about that really helped me, and also understanding who I am. And this is something that is very, very important, you know. I used to play basketball, you know. There's a whole lot of things that happens in the world of basketball. But what really helped me to stay the course is understanding who I was. When you understand who you are, you don't conform. A lot of people talk about transformation. And when we talk about transformation, I'm not limiting it to a theological sense, but general transformation in life only comes, or effective transformation is a product of understanding who you are. So for me, I would go to play basketball with guys on a trip. Guys would indulge in all kinds of things. I would not be tempted, not even a whiff, because I knew who I was, okay? My purpose was very clear. I knew what I needed to do in order to get where I wanted to be. So if a friend of mine comes and says, let's go and do this, the question I'm going to ask myself is, does this really conform to, first of all, who I am? Because when you understand who you are, it's easy to develop the values that then dictate how you behave, that shape your character. So people knew. Even on all the teams I've played, people knew. You know, you'd go out as a team, you go to a club, you know, you're just there. I mean, I'll just be there seated. I mean, it's a team thing. It's a team bonding thing, you know. You go there and everything, but people knew who you are. Even today, I'll be very frank with you. If I walked in, what's this club at East Park now? What's this club now? If I walk at, no, there's the other one. The couple. You know, I was meeting, there's a Chinese person I went to meet over there. And the moment I stepped in there, somebody was asking me like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, wow. What are you doing here? You know, why are you asking me what I'm doing here? What are you doing here? Do you have exclusive rights to be here and I don't? This is a public place, you know. So we're just joking, you know, and going at it back and forth. But it's, you know, somebody would ask like that because that's not who they know you to be. Not that we discriminate or look down on the choices that people make to be in certain environments and settings. We respect their choices. It's their choices, okay? But based on how they know me, they would ask and say, okay, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I'm here for this. I knew it. You know, I knew it. So it's very, very important, you know, just to know who you are, what you stand on. Because if you don't have what you stand on, unfortunately, like we've heard great men say, you will fall for anything, you know. So that is what has predominantly really helped me. And, yes, basketball is my passion, but another thing I'm passionate about is what I do at Diamond TV. I'm a business reporter. That is something also that I really love, something that has helped me to be who I am today. And the consistent mentorship and guidance of Costaman's who has been through the journey has been very instrumental. And he's one person, by the way, who's not just a boss. That voice that you talked about, he is also that voice in my life, Oftentimes he will call me, we sit in his office and he would ask me certain tough questions, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about this? You see, be very careful. This job comes with these pressures. There are these temptations that will come with this job. So you need to watch your life. You need to ensure that you don't fall in this trap. He's been that voice as well in my life.
Awesome. Awesome. This has been a great conversation. I've picked up a lot of lessons, and I hope even those watching will be able to run with them. So thank you very much for honoring the invite and being on the Umubanga podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also appreciate being here for the first time, but great. Feel at home, man. Keep doing what you're doing. This is really good. We need more platforms where we can have sober conversations and just be able to educate, interact, and possibly in whichever way inspire one another.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you have enjoyed this episode of the Umubanga podcast. Make sure to share, subscribe, and like, and comment. Make sure you comment. Let us know how this episode has greatly impacted you and where you're watching from. So from me, Dennis Mubanga Kabwe, it's bye-bye.